Nobody in the history of war has ever been asked, but what's your civilian to combatant ratio? Nobody's ever taken the enemy's word on the casualty count. But fine, even if you took the enemy's casualty count, so Hamas, the Gaza Health Ministry, one, if you believe that there's a number or a story or a photo that leaves Gaza without the permission of Hamas, then you're biased. The Hamas Gaza Health Ministry numbers. Have you ever asked any of these people that use these numbers? Have you seen the Gaza Health Ministry list of people who have died by natural causes? No, it doesn't exist. So 20,000 kids, supposedly. You're right. The United Nations puts kids at 18. Mm-hmm. So that's a list of people, anybody below the age of 18. The fact that Hamas has radicalized the entire population and deploys child soldiers, they don't care. Nobody cares. Hamas kills people themselves. I mean, over 20% of Hamas's rockets, so over 13,000 rockets they've launched at Israel, have landed inside of Gaza, killing Gazans. They go on the list. Really, anybody who's died for any reason goes on the list. If you were a Hamas terrorist who crossed the border into Israel to kill, slaughter, rape, and maim, and died, you're on the list. A war of this scale and of this viciousness is aired on the phones. The algorithm actually drives it to their phones. Every awful thing that's happened in war gets driven to the uninformed minds of massive populations. That is unique. Had this not been Israel, there would be something different, because they start with the image and like, that's awful. Israel did this on purpose. And they don't want to listen to anybody with any contradictory information about why is this happening. Do you realize that every individual in Gaza could fit in Hamas's tunnels with ease? There's over 400 miles of tunnels. All 2.2 million civilians could fit in those tunnels, but you've never seen an image of a single civilian in those. And I do war around the world. In Ukraine, the civilians sought refuge because Russia didn't give notice in the tunnels. I'm fine if people are anti-war. I'm not fine if people are anti-fact on what is happening in Gaza.
A false statement, and also the use of the term like most destructive war of the modern era, when it compares maybe a battle against one city in combination to all the cities in Gaza. There's no military in the world who has faced the challenge that Israel is facing right now in the war against Hamas. An entire underground war where the enemy is using the civilian population as its strategy to try to get the other side to stop moving forward for their military strategic objective. No military has faced a military who is shooting at its civilians behind them in the midst of the operation. Because of the 13,000 Hamas rockets, 100% of those have been dumb. They do not have precision-guided ammunition. Nobody's talking about that statistic.
Is it Israel's fault that its own civilians are incredibly well protected by defensive infrastructure like the Iron Dome and bomb shelters? Is it Israel's fault that Hamas has built one of the most extensive networks of underground bomb shelters in the history of warfare, but doesn't allow its own civilians to enter them? Is it Israel's fault that Hamas uses children as lookouts, thereby turning them into combatants under the international laws of war? Because when we hold Israel alone responsible for the civilian death toll in Gaza, a death toll that results directly from Hamas's barbaric style of warfare, we are implicitly holding Israel responsible for Hamas's war crimes against the Palestinians.
Hamas knew when they went into Israel that they weren't going to overthrow Israel. When they took hostages, they knew that the IDF was coming for them. And yet they did both, right? So they knew they couldn't defeat the IDF militarily. And they knew getting hostages would force the IDF to come after them in a big way. So why'd they do that? And how did they know that Western academia and media would almost instantly be on their side? And the reason why is because a lot of these organizations have invested very, very heavily within American academia. I don't know the numbers for European academia, but I'm assuming it's probably significant. At the same token, they understood that the way that you manipulate Western media and Western sensibility is civilian casualties. If you're in a position where you benefit strategically from civilian casualties, you have the perfect environment to maximize that in a way that no other military can mitigate other than giving up.
You know, critics of the Israeli government will say that there's a lot of innocent people in Gaza who don't worship Geth, who have been killed in airstrikes. And how do you sort of square that?
Well, if I may say so, most of the criticism in the Western media and from, let's say, many politicians is there's been too many innocent deaths in Gaza, and it's got to stop. Okay. I always have a challenge to these people, which I simply say to them, fine, tell me how you would achieve the following. Let's say we're in New York. Let's say that New Jersey fires rockets for years. Let's say that for 18 years, the government there has used all money coming in to enrich themselves and to build a vast tunnel network in which they can store munitions and hostages and much more. And let's say that right next door to where you're living, this very densely well-built up terrorist infrastructure invaded you, killed hundreds and hundreds of your people, took 250 more hostage. Tell me how you would operate in that terrain to ensure that you kill or capture all the leaders of the people who did this and wipe out their ability to ever rule that entity again. And secondly, how you get back 250 hostages. And I have yet to hear a critic of the Israeli government's actions give me a viable plan for how you would get back the hostages. And there are still several dozen hostages in captivity, some living, and how you would punish and kill the people who did that. Because just again, if you extrapolate out the population of Israel, about 9 million, to a population the size of the United States, this was equivalent on October the 7th to some 44,000 Americans being killed in one day and another 10,000 Americans being taken hostage. As for the ideology, I have yet to be persuaded that there is something so extraordinary about Hamas as a force that their ideology can never be wiped out. We have seen many death cult ideologies in history.
The ones you mentioned.
The ones I
20th
mentioned,
century.
or let's just take one that, let's take Imperial Japan. You would have found people who say there's nothing we can do to wipe that out. I do not believe there is something so unique about Hamas that among all the death cults we've seen throughout history, this one is uniquely virile.